are recording live across California. Welcome to the Regeneration Nation podcast. My name is Jess Alvarez Parfrey. I'm serving as the ED of Transition US, and I'm here with dear friends and movement builders, Alex Zubia and Elvia Cruz-Garcia, who are doing some amazing work. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about locating ourselves in the work, in the movement, and just what we're really passionate about, what's really kind of lighting us up right now. Given the state of the world as it is, again, we know the story, multiple compounding crises. This is an opportunity for transformation, transmutation, paradigm shifts. So reminding ourselves to stay grounded, literally, keeping our hands to the earth, and really weaving our work together is critical in all of this. So I'll stop talking, and I want to hand it over to you, Alex. We've been having some really beautiful conversations about what's going on up north, and love to hear kind of like where you're at. Give us a sense of your location, your movement, positionality, and yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, so live in the Central Valley, Yokutch land, but more specifically, the region I live in is the Choi-Numni land. It is the land that the federal government has not recognized. In my opinion, it's because they want to displace the people. So like learning all that, is because of, learning certain, words, one of those things, transformative, we hear a lot, but, it's like, what is transformative without restorative? So the work that we're doing in Chico, is kind of like, that restorative justice, because before we can, restore, like the relationships and the land, back, we have to have that connection to the land in which we lost. I've had conversations like, because of certain laws that were in place, I don't have, that knowledge of my indigenous, background, my indigenous lineage, because they wanted, assimilation, and they wanted to have everybody kind of like in a sense conform. So, it's like I was having a conversation, with the with the Pascantha tribe in Sacramento, Rolling Hills. It's a band of um I'm sorry, I'm just kind of like drawing a blank on the name right now, because they're just we just came back, from Chico. We had, so much youth with us. Navigating also, like young adults was kind of like hard, and then now kind of like stepping into this space. But the biggest thing that I was kind of like trying to take away from this is, with the tribes, with Ali, up in Chico and doing all this TEK work, one of the things was, it's like, yeah, Nomlakai. I'm like, yes, that tribe. They're so kind, so generous. It feels so good being in those, the presence of the matriarchs. You know what I mean? Like these women are just like they're so amazing. And one thing like I was trying to say was like that resonated with me was they said, let us show you who you are, by introducing you to the foods again. Because what was lost for me is now going to be reintroduced, to me from the foods, and it's so critical, just kind of like knowing that. And to people who don't know what TEK is, it's traditional ecological knowledge. Um, it's native science. It's science that has been, happening for the last 200,000 years. It's science that has been, proven, effective for, a millennia. So, TEK is really, it's a past, but it's also the future, and we have to see that, in order for us to like really make an impact in this, transformative type of movement that we're in.
You, Elvia, to give us a sense of your movement location, and just if you want to respond to anything that Alex has also brought to the table. There's a lot there.
Yeah. Hey everyone. My name is Elvia Cruz, she, her pronouns, and I'm currently located in Los Angeles, California, also known as Tongva Land. And recently I've just been thinking a lot around yeah, like place. And for me, it's been really important to connect more with my, I guess, background. My parents are from Oaxaca, and I think like there's a lot to unpack there. Growing up, I feel like there was always some kind of like feelings of like shame that came with it because people treated me differently after finding out that my parents are from Oaxaca. And like I never knew how to like, place that, or like I never really knew how to like deal with those feelings as a kid, because I felt like it was also sort of wrong to feel that sort of shame because, like there was, I shouldn't be having that types of feelings, but it was just very complicated because I didn't understand at that point, like why were people being super mean about that. And I felt like I couldn't really talk about my background as much without receiving some kind of like, yeah, negativity. So there was a lot of, like complications there, but like recently, I've been able to reconnect more with like my roots, and I recently joined a group called Indigenous Oaxacan Cooperativa, and it's a very grassroots organization. And I feel like there's been a lot of joy to be able to like build community with other people with similar backgrounds and be able to talk more about like how like some of the feelings that we also felt growing up, and like um learning how to deal with them now, but also like starting to reclaim and starting to like feel more proud of like my background and starting to feel more proud of like where I come from. And I feel like there's a lot of, like I also want to build more intergenerational community. I think very recently we had like a meeting with some folks from the LA tenants in K-Town. There's a chapter, and there's a lot of Oaxacan people living in yeah, in K-Town. So like they've been organizing because there's been like a campaign called Keys for Cash, and basically landlords give people money so that they can move out, because a lot of people are paying like not super expensive rent because they've been there for a long time, including my parents. Like the rent that we pay is it hasn't passed the $1,000 per month, so they basically want to kick everyone out so that they could bring in like new people that will pay a lot of money to live in those apartments. So it was really sort of like a healing moment for me to like be in space, and like even virtual space with other, um, I guess more older, like Oaxacan that are trying to organize for like, housing, security and whatnot, and being able to like in a way like see my parents in them and wanting to be there for them and like support them as they are trying to have more like security. So yeah, like overall I've just been like thinking a lot about my identity and like, who I am. And like yesterday I went to a workshop on the ego, and like the first question they asked us was just like who are you? And like I was just sitting there writing down like who am I? And I was just like, honestly, I'm just a person that like cares about building like alternative systems of care. So that was a very interesting like question to think about too. But yeah, overall I've just been like thinking of like more finding opportunities to like build community with people and to build friendships, because I think that's really important, especially during this time like when we're still in the pandemic. And there's a lot of I think it's just really important to build care, because I think like we want to make sure that people don't keep getting reinfected. And I feel like there's a lot of like, like a lot of health inequalities already that exist within like even brown and black communities. And I feel like it's important to like think about the narrative that we want to build, and like how can we support one another during this pandemic. But yeah, so like that's some of my background, some context. I'll pass it back to y'all.
No, I'm really grateful to be able to do this work with you both. And yeah, I'll locate myself in the work. So right now I'm speaking to y'all from the meeting place of the Cahuilla, Luiseño, Ipai, and Cupeño territories in rural San Diego County. And I'm very blessed to be able to live with my family and steward land here. And part of our whole journey, and this has been deeply personal for me as well in terms of reconnecting to my Indigenous roots and heritage. My people come from Sonora, Mexico, the Yueme or Yaqui people. And I also have other heritages that I'm still doing my due diligence to learn about and live up to and honor. And I also am the descendant of stolen peoples as well. So putting that all together, and my husband likes to joke, he's like, you're one of the most American people I know, because I carry all of those different lineages. Like we all do. We all carry many different threads that make us who we are. And I also like to remember that we're all indigenous to somewhere. Our ancestors all had relationship to the land at some point. And so that breaking point, that has created space for lots of trauma that we're all working through and attempting to heal through. The system of capitalism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, those bear the legacy of that severance and that breaking as well. So again, we're trying to weave ourselves back together. The earth has been issuing a distress call for some time saying, this is not working. This is not okay. Y'all need to shift. Y'all need to change. And having this space in which I can be outside, I'm like hearing birds sing. I'm looking at beautiful native grasses, like moving through the wind. I've been able to just take walks and like observe new wildflowers that I didn't know were there before and be able to look them up and understand their medicine, understand their food like value, and like again, just all of the different teachings that all of these different ancestors offer us. And while this may not be precisely my ancestral territory, I'm in the closest proximity that I could probably get, given the way that land access works here in a capitalist system. And I want to be respectful and honor the knowledge of place that exists here. So I've been able to make a visit, for example, to a place called the Malki Museum. And this is a museum that centers the traditional ecological knowledge of the Cahuilla people. It also has representation from Chumash people, like all of the beautiful exchange of knowledge that was happening across California, what we now call California, and also across the country as a whole that we now call the United States. That is powerful. Like Alex was saying, like that's the past of this place, but that's the future. And so returning to that in a good way is just essential. And like being able to raise my son where he knows like how to plant seeds, he can understand how to track the sun and the moon, and having that space, it is a blessing, it's a privilege, and we want to create more access for all of us to have that healing. So again, like the intention here is to create community space, not to hoard, our own private permaculture oasis. It's to really work in integrity with the land and what it's asking for. And the land is asking to be returned to itself and to be whole, and to have people here who can heal and connect and build. And so on that note, I want to hear more, Alex, about some of that healing and connecting work that you've been doing. And also tell us a little bit more about Regenerate Fresno. Like we talk a lot about regeneration in this work, and I think it means many different things to different people, but would love to hear more from you just like about that work and just what's come up for you in doing that.
Yeah, but just also before I forget, I just wanted to say, like, Elvia, if you ever want me to go to Koreatown, you know what I mean, and eat some Oaxacan food, there's this restaurant Gila Gets out there, and you know what I mean, like, whew, I love it. Yeah, really, a lot of this healing work is just really like decolonization, like really trying to like look at everything through a different lens, like a trauma informed lens, and everything that we have that we carry is from generational trauma. Both, the oppressors and the oppressed, we carry this, and we realize, like when you talk, like you're in San Diego and you just honored, all the land stewards, before you were on that land. And, talking about returning to the land, it's like, it's going to take everybody, like we need to call in everybody, for this type of work, because, it's like, there's different levels, right? Like you can be indigenous, you can have, the most, blood, and be a part of that tribe, but we don't really know where you're at on your healing journey because we've all been affected by, colonization in a sense, so it's like what I've been trying to do is just kind of like this is for myself. And when I introduced myself yesterday, or the day before yesterday to everybody, like when they said like, all right, now speak, and I'm like, uh and I'm just like, well, honestly, like as 33, that's how old I am now. I'm barely learning this stuff, like this is all new to me. So, like my response was like, I want to learn this because you cannot move away from like the healing aspect of it when you're working with the dirt, when you're making observations of like the whole ecosystem. Like we seen the eagle that passed by and we knew that the eagles haven't been there for a while, so that eagle sighting was a blessing. Seeing different types of birds come back, seeing like these bugs, that like just ladybugs and native bees and butterflies just all kind of like living in this like environment together. I'm like, this is beautiful. But having these youth with me, it's like, hey, like these are the future. And what I mean by youth, and a lot of people, think I'm talking about like young, like 15, 16, it's like youth is, like a general term, for like us, working at Fresno Barrios, and it's usually like we say youth from like 12 to like 24. So they're really young adults, but still we got to look at them as youth because it's like the system, everything has been so hard on some of these kids that have been in the city. The school to prison pipeline, that's real. Like we talk about it as far as like, there's that now, right? So that's what these kids see. So before that, they had people that look like me that were, used for like mining mercury, and they would, die like pretty fast, or they would use them as like, sex servants, and like this is actual history of like California in the last 100 and something years, and now they're still making money off us, but just in a different way because these prisons are privatized, and by putting us in these jails and stuff, like not doing anything, they're making money off us again. And it's like they're like using us as either cheap labor or just to incarcerate us because what else are they going to do with us? Like so like for the healing, it's like for me, it's like I realized I beat that, right? Like and I'm not dead yet, but like for the most part, like I spent, my time trying to like not become incarcerated, and I found myself, running and leaving and realizing, every time I go to a new place like Santa Barbara, this place is beautiful. You would see people that were, living that regenerative life, that organic life, that, that life, and it's like it didn't feel right for me because I wasn't with my community. And I realized every time I ran away for self-preservation so I didn't get caught up in the system, in gangs, and all these things, like I realized that like what I always needed was community. So now the healing work is I have these youth that are coming with me that are like 21, that are like I'm 10 years or senior, or 12 years or senior, but we're able to learn together. There's no like, hey, I have an adultist point of view. Like I did all this, this is my ego. I'm going to show you this because I know words like food apartheid, or, like, nah, like I'm just learning together. And when we're breaking it down, like, I don't even know any of the native languages. Like there's over 300 and something, languages. I can't even pronounce, some of these words, So like, I really like truly mean like I'm learning it, like together with them because, we all have to kind of like, when we step into this like healing space, to be ready to release that ego. And that ego is, the last thing that wants to die, like some people say even like there's a little bit of healthy ego, but like sometimes, like for me, what I've seen is like that healthy ego sometimes could also be, not really, like it's kept me alive. It's kept me alive, I've been using it for survival. But now, I'm at a place where it's like I feel more connected to everything than I've ever felt before, So it's like I don't feel the same way that I used to feel. I don't have that same connection to, what I used to have, because everything that I've I feel, that was taught to me as a kid was an indoctrination of, capitalism, of, extraction, of, all these things. So like, so now going over there, bringing these youth all in the same, place, it's like, well, this is how I use, my privilege, or my, my things that I have to help, now, these youth. And it's been amazing, but like I got this bug, right? And I'm like, I got, bit by it. And I'm like, now everything I want to learn, like if it's not this, it's like, for me, it's not important, because this is a solution. This is a solution to a lot of problems. Like, guess what? The forest fires, there's a thing called cultural burning. Who would have thought, that, like this worked for, like thousands of years before they made it illegal to be indigenous. The land of the free, as long as you're not indigenous, you know what I mean? Like you can practice whatever religion as long as it's not indigenous religion.
Remembering that history and moving from that awareness of how these things are still affecting us to this day is like essential. And Alex, I'm gonna push you on this one, but like Regenerate Fresno, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And
yes.
what's going on with Regenerate Fresno?
That's the exciting part. During the pandemic, I was working in two different, nonprofits. I realized it's really hard to organize without having a space to organize. So, I just said, hey, let's do it. We've been talking about it for, some time about creating these, regional hubs, in the Central Valley. I'm in a rural area in Sanger. It's, right by Kings Canyon, right by Choi Park, just right in an area where it's, prime for TEK work, but also, trying to come up with, like Regeneration Nation, so like what does that look like? What is the future, of, like the United States or where we're at, like, and for me, it's TEK, but then it's also, regeneration, it's like we have this movement that's happening with, across the board with all sorts of different types of groups, and what they're realizing is there's so many people here and we're utilizing all the resources and we only have one planet. So like, what does regeneration look like, in different industries? Like, what does it look like in the food industry? What does it look like, in the construction industry? What does it look like, in, the interior design industry, or as far as like advocating, it's like we have so many people that create groups to advocate for equity and equality and all that. But what if, like, what if, we took the regeneration, model and we put that, into everything. So what Regenerate Fresno is that, it's like how can we be regenerative in all the things that we do? So like for construction, we have, the broken window community builders, like what we're hoping to do is create like an incubator that is, helping, certain individuals who want to be a part of the solution be able to like, have access, to certain, networks and to spaces and, information that they don't continue to, like harm the environment, so, we're taught one way, profit over people, but now it's like, what if we put planet over everything? You know what I mean? Over people, over like, just in general, for the next 7 generations, like, what does that look like? It's like, and and yeah, it's a beautiful thing because people have been receptive, and it's not even my words, like it's words that I get from the time that I started here, at transition. It's everything that I've heard, from current members and past members, like when I got into transition, I kind of like the same thing with TEK, because transition for me was before TEK, but transition is what led me to TEK. So, with transition, we had that Regeneration Nation, this whole project around that. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm all in, So now it's like Regeneration Nation, TEK, those are the focus, groups and areas. So Regenerate Fresno is basically that. It's a transformative center. It's a hub, for people who want to meet, for people who want to make changes, who want to make differences, for people who want, to focus on their mental health. Like, we get certified when we go to these TK trainings, but at the same time, you don't have to get certified. You could just come. You could just be in community, because what we need is, we need to be outdoors more. We need to have these things more, but we also know that, like, there is that, like, well, we can't just have a mass exodus of the city. So, like, while we're in the city, what are the things that we can do that are, non-extractive, that are non-harming to the environment? And so yeah, that's Regenerate Fresno, is an idea that was, born from, multiple ideas, and really, through the transition network, Regenerate Fresno, it will, regenerate Fresno. So I'm excited.
That's what's up. Elvia, I'd love to hear more about kind of the intergenerational work that I've heard you describe within the Cooperativa, and just maybe some of the like visions and hopes for the future that you all have been discussing.
Yeah, so with the Cooperativa, I joined as a board member um some couple months ago, and basically our goal or our aim through this organization is to build solidarity and empowerment among indigenous diasporas across Southern California. So we didn't have like a newsletter, so we decided to launch one, a monthly newsletter, and we've been sharing like job opportunities, resources, news, relevant events. And we really were thinking more about like what would be, important and useful for our community, and like how can we help us like have the tools to basically be able to build a great livelihood in Los Angeles. And I know a lot of us are first generation. Like, I guess like a lot of people that engage with our account, like we have an Instagram, and like a lot of them I've noticed have been like first generations. So that has been really interesting, because like a lot of them are either in college or navigating like living in Los Angeles in this capitalistic system. There's a lot there as well. And how can we like support that? And it's like also this whole new word called Oaxaca, California. So like there's this, a huge number of people living in California from Oaxaca. So that's been pretty interesting. But we also started hosting virtual spaces with the goal of building communities and friendships among our community. And it's just been a very beautiful and healing experience to just be in the presence with others. And yeah, like I think we recently have been acknowledging that we've had more engagement, I guess, with more of like first generation Oaxacans, but we've been wanting to broaden that and like reach to more of like, I guess, the older generation to build that bridge. So we've been trying to make those attempts, and like we got reached out by like the LA Tenants K-Town chapter, and they've been doing more organizing with the I guess older community. So we're trying to bridge that gap and like trying to collaborate more, and like we let them know that, if they need any support, and like to let us know like in any ways that we can. And we've been discussing like building some workshops with them and like figuring more details of that. And overall, I think like some challenges I would reflect on is just limited capacity from our board team, since a lot of them are, as I mentioned, first generations, but they're juggling jobs and like school and like other responsibilities. So I think like the challenge has been like, how can we even get to a point where we could like have paid positions so that people could be able to like focus more of the time and energy into the organization. So I think like, I don't know if that even ties into the whole like, challenges that a lot of like nonprofits face in general with funding and like all that all that issues, but I guess like that could be a whole other conversation in general. But yeah, our general goals are building more collaboration and building community power and sharing resources, a lot of solidarity, indigenous solidarity, class solidarity, and building empathy across communities, and honestly just like empowering people to advocate for themselves and give people the tools to do so. So those are our top three priorities slash goals. And I will put the account, the Instagram account on the podcast description so y'all could check us out and like reach out. I'll also put like more information so that yeah, if y'all want to like definitely reach out, especially like if you are someone from Oaxaca or if you are an ally and supporter and been wanting to learn more on how to get more involved. Yeah, like that'll be super cool if you all want to come. We also have been hosting community spaces. So like that could be another way that y'all could like come and connect with us. But yeah, I think like that's some of yeah, reflections.
Awesome. And I was really stoked to be able to connect y'all with Yvonne and the Los Angeles for All group. They're part of the Radical Municipalism Learning Series. So like Alex was saying, like this vision of transition, sometimes it's like kind of like what I'm doing, like living off grid, growing your own food. And that's beautiful. Like we need those spaces. And the reality is not everybody has access to that. So how do we create these bridges between urban, rural spaces so that we can help each other out? We have that real solid network, that solidarity support system that can keep us resilient, healthy, and well. And also, again, like sharing knowledge, like we're learning in different places. And I think that also touches on the theme of we've been emphasizing like regional collaboration, having that regional awareness, because that's where you have like it's a game changer when you go from that hyper local, like your neighborhood, to your super local community, your city, to like a regional awareness. And then the other lens is a bioregional awareness, right? So a lot of us may be familiar with like our county, for example, but do you know what watershed you're in? Do you know what traditional indigenous territory you're living on? Because that's the original bioregionalism, is that super specific culture building according to place and relationship to that place. And again, water is life. Knowing how to tend the land, knowing how to feed, clothe, and heal, and having like no such thing as poverty and houselessness. That's a different cultural orientation. So those are the lessons that we can learn and integrate. But I'm wondering if y'all like, I'm thinking a lot about food and water. But I want to be mindful of our time together here because we could just keep talking and talking. And I always love having conversations with y'all. But yeah, putting these two topics on the table, food, water, go.
It's really important, but like it's a trap, you start talking about food, we could spend all night here. Um, yeah, real quick, just wanted to, talk about like the wahim, a potato that was, and it was funny because we are talking to Mel, and she said the USDA, classified it as a flower. So because they classified it as a flower, that this potato, this indigenous potato that was being harvested for a long time, went unnoticed. Well, it's like, guess what? The whole time there's food right here, but not having that, like that knowledge, having somebody go like, oh, this is a flower, and then all the nutrients, all this stuff, at the root of it, so it's like I'm glad that we get to do this because it's like we're gonna uncover so much different foods that haven't been genetically modified. Somebody was talking about the soil, and food is important, water is important, but also the soil too, and a lot of the soil is being broken down by all of these, like monocrop and monocrop cultures. So like, the apple that was an apple about like 50 years ago isn't the same apple that we're eating now because it's not the same soil, and it's like also realizing that like, we have to get back to the soil too. Soil, water, food, it's all interconnected. Um, but yeah, just thank you for the time to speak on here, and I can't wait to get back to it. and discover more things that the USDA messed up.
That could be a whole conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead. Elvia. But you're right, soil essential in this conversation. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, I guess, my own personal um relationship with food. I've just been discovering it more about like finding the joy in like cooking a lot of nutritious foods and like feeding and your own body to like feel good and like be able to be present in community and being able to like support other people because I know like that one quote that like, you can't help others if you can't help yourself. I feel like that definitely resonates a lot. Like you can't really do a lot of this organizing work if you're not feeling good. So I think like I've been on that journey of like feeling good or like feeling better and like using food or like finding like a lot of different recipes and like um I think like yeah like food is really important and I think like I also believe that if we built regenerative food systems we could definitely heal a lot of like even how people feel like I think like a lot of people are feeling inflammation from like literally like capitalism, colonization, and like how this is impacting us and how, we feed ourselves and like, all those big corporations, like for example, McDonald's or like Burger King and like all this other, like they make so much money from like selling food that isn't like gonna make people feel good and like feel like what energy and like I think like definitely trying to like think about how can we build like yeah regenerative food systems and like thinking about how can we build more spaces across California even that could like be community gardens or community food forests and whatnot. But I think like I don't know if Jess, if you wanted to share a little bit more context of like what you've been doing with your family and like your like the vision around land hubs because I think it'd be really cool for people to learn more about that.
Thanks, Elvia, for that invitation. So like we recently had Alex, we had you over. You were able to spend some time with us, visit the land. And I remember some of my fondest memories of being with my grandparents was listening to them talk about living on a farm or the different food knowledge that they had or what plants could be used as medicine. So this land we've named Rancho Nepantla, Nepantla being the Nawa word for in-betweenness. And that's like honoring kind of like my identity and my journey and like moving in between many different cultural identities and lineages, but then also just kind of this moment of transition where that in-between place in the paradigm shift can be really uncomfortable. It can be really like challenging and heavy, but it could also open up such beautiful insights if we know how to be radically present and aware. So this land is an invitation again to heal. We are like working on our gardens out here to provide food, focusing heavily on indigenous food. So we've been doing a lot of research about the ecosystem that we're in, the bioregion that we're in, also looking at how climate change has affected different ecotones and how they're shifting. So how can we grow foods here that are maybe like from the Sonoran Desert, right? Like that's foods that my people know. So we have nopal here, we've planted mesquite, palo verde. We also have pistachios because, hey, I like a really good pesto. We also have dahlias, which are beautiful flowers. And this was something I didn't even know, but the Mexica or the Aztec, they grew dahlias for their beauty. But guess what? Like you were saying, Alex, it wasn't just a flower. At the bottom, the tuber was food. And it was brought to Europe because it was beautiful, but a lot of the folks didn't know how to cook it properly. And so it never really took off as a food there. So I love cooking. My partner is an amazing cook. Honestly, I got really excited when Alex and my partner Daniel were talking about like cooking. I'm like, ooh, get you both into a kitchen. But again, it's like that joy, like you were saying, Elvia, of like creating community with people with whom you share the food, but also like reminding yourself that the land is also part of your community. The different plant species here that you're working with, this is all a collaboration and it could be done regeneratively where you're all healing each other feeding each other and nourishing each other for generations to come. So the intention here is to have a space where we can have community gatherings, we can have trainings, multi-purpose kind of place, a safe place, a haven, where we can gather and weave together and learn different skills. We plan on having different animals here as well. So, you know, Nathan, who's also on our board, he's been doing some really amazing work with Navajo churro sheep. They're really beautiful and resilient breed of sheep that the Navajo, the Dene people have been caring for. And we'd like to bring them in because they're really helpful in terms of managing landscapes that have been disturbed to help address fire issues. So they can clear some of the brush, right? And then they can also provide wool. And yeah, you know, having chickens, turkeys, and just having a beautiful space to gather. And like, I just have this vision of like kids and families like eating amazing food, telling stories, playing games, just, and then looking up at the stars too, and just being able to spend that time.
Maybe no work on Monday.
I think we should, dude, Monday and Friday. I want to get that shouldn't exist anymore. 3
It's
days.
like it's so beautiful. Like I went out to your space, and then it's like, oh, back in this. Just like Chico, it's like you're out there, you're in a beautiful environment, you're seeing what ecosystems could be like. You know, you're seeing, you know, the symbiotic relationships amongst, you know, certain things, you know, and it's just like, you know, come back, you hear the sirens, you know, like you're like,
And the alarm clock and all the
yeah,
things.
you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. This was a dream. You know, it wasn't real yet. You know?
Yet, there we go. This vision is building, and like we've shared, this is happening all across the country. And I know we've been talking a lot about California. California has particular significance in terms of the global economy, being the 6th largest economy in the world. It's also one of the most recently colonized places in this land that we call the United States. So there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of healing work that's been active. And there's beautiful work happening across the country. I want to give a quick shout out to the Center for Indigenous Knowledge, Alex, who you've been linking up with. If you want to share maybe a little bit about them and their work.
Maya Soto, Alexis, I mean everybody, you know, T-Sick, you know, rest in peace, Joe Soto. He was a healer among, you know, healers. You know, he was a beautiful soul. You know, I got to meet him out in Pinnacles. They came out here. You know, they have a lot of, you know, indigenous, you know, roots. I would want to, like, you know, invite them to, like, you know, speak, you know, for themselves, because I can say a million things like that are great about them, but it still wouldn't do justice to how beautiful, you know, that organization really is. But yeah, T-Sick, we got to connect. Yeah, for sure.
That's the point. It's like, this is a journey of like, we're not trying to tell anybody that this is the only way to organize. We're emphasizing things like traditional ecological knowledge and decolonization, because this is authentic and real for us in our journey, and like the spaces that we're seeing some of the most beautiful impacts and opportunities to bring folks together. And folks have lots of different names for this work. There's healing justice, restorative justice, transformative justice, transition, you know, all of regeneration. There's so many different ways to describe it. And that's, again, the beauty of it. That's how we build resilient systems, is honoring that context, that specificity. And you don't know how to move in that way unless you're honest. And Elvia, I think you brought this up at the beginning. Who am I? Who am I in this work? Who am I in this life? What do I have to share? What do I have to learn? Because we all have a lot to learn, and we have probably even a lot more to unlearn because of the way that we've been moving through these systems. So on that note, I want to honor both of you and just like appreciate you for all that I've been able to learn from you, and just like honoring the larger communities that hold us and help us to grow and keep weaving these efforts, not just in California, but across the country and across the globe. Because like Alex said, planet, this is planet level. All right, y'all. Much love.
Thank
On
you
that
too,
note,
Jess.
time
We
to eat.
appreciate you.
Yeah, time to eat some food. All right, bye.
Everybody, bye.
All right, take care, y'all.